But other than that, what opportunities do you see for Iraq?
Okay, so again, there's oil, there are people, educated population, that itself, and a young population. Um, so prior to COVID, there was a kind of Arab Spring in 2019, 2020 in Iraq, where people came out onto the streets and they were protesting, and for all the right reasons. They were sort of tearing down these symbols of Iranian power. They weren't necessarily pro-American, but they weren't necessarily anti-American either. But they were certainly coming out against this sort of nefarious influence that Iran has in their country, and they were looking to finally deal with this. Right? I mean, a lot of the age, of the average Iraqi is quite young. The majority of people weren't alive in 2003. So they don't remember all of this history that wasn't their lived experience. And so you do have this political force of the youth, which seems to be, seems to want something better. They have these resources, and they do have, their position in the Middle East geopolitically is a blessing and a curse. They are surrounded by all these other states who have, who are in their country, right, and have a lot of influence in their country, but which means they're also, deeply connected to all parts of the region in a way that doesn't exist elsewhere, right? If you want to do business with the Saudis and the Iranians, Baghdad might be the only, one of the few capitals where you can actually do that, right? And if you include the Americans, right? So, maybe Doha, they try to be pretty neutral, or, Muscat and Oman tries to be pretty neutral. But Iraq, I mean, you really have a strong presence and decent relations with the Americans, with Europeans, with Turks, with other Arab states, and with the Iranians. And there are optimistic Iraqis. If you talk to optimistic Iraqi politicians, they'll tell you that being in this sort of central location, it's been a curse, but it can also be a blessing, because they can use that to.
So the location slash relations, and also what you before that mentioned, the educated population plus the oil. But those two things weren't sufficient before that, right? I mean, they had those, let alone the last thing, but they had those two first things before that, the oil and the
Yes.
education. Well, nothing happened, right?
Yeah. It's not this is not destiny, right? This is just.
Yeah. So what would they need to be? What would they need to change so it
Well,
works?
I mean, I think number one, the thing that they need to change is the issue of, they have to figure out a way to dial back this corruption. I would say to eliminate corruption, that's going to be impossible. I mean, it's
So it goes all against corrupt. That's
I mean,
the thing
so
hindering
that's
them.
the number one issue, I think, in Iraq,
Okay.
because they have so much money. I mean, we're not talking about like, um, we're not talking about like a minor boost. I mean, we're talking about like billions and billions of dollars, right? I mean, the entire GDP of other countries in the region, or elsewhere in the world, is being squandered every year, by just evaporating into this system of corrupt officials. I mean, we're talking about one of the world's largest oil producers. I mean, look, you don't want to make any good comparison. I wouldn't want to make any good comparisons with Russia, right? But look what Russia is able to do, right? Sanctioned by so much of the world, but they're able to hold on because of they just have so much gas and oil that they're selling still. And they're getting through war, right? I mean, I think their GDP actually went up last year, or something crazy like that, right? I mean, Iraq is in a very similar situation, much smaller country than Russia, but similar levels of natural resources, right? Look at the neighboring states. If you go to Dubai, I mean, Dubai it's not oil, but yes, you go to UAE or Doha, and you look at these, these sort of futuristic skylines, right? And they have these sovereign wealth funds, and they're, there's just a tremendous amount of wealth in those countries. Iraq has a similar, amount of oil. If they could develop it and use it, in the right way, there is an immense potential there. But the number one reason that they're not is this corruption. And then two, I'm repeating the same things I already said, but developing their country is going to take, building of a state, democracy, all that, or it'd be nice to have a democracy, but something, some sort of legitimate state with rule. And that's not going to happen when you have these militias running around and you have Iranians who are in their country up to no good. So dealing with those issues would be the key. I don't say it's impossible, right? I think it's certainly possible, but nothing is destiny, right? If a new strong ruler came in like Saddam and started invading people again or building up the military, doing those, then nothing good's going to come of that.
But you see Iraq's future rather positive.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that
No?
there's a chance.
Okay, there's a chance.
There's a chance, right? If I had to bet, I wouldn't say that it's probably going to go in a good direction. I don't think they're going to be able to deal with with a lot of these issues. I wish they could. I wish the best. If it was up to me, they would do wonderful. But those are huge hurdles to get. You really have to refashion whole parts of the state and society and the way that it functions.